This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Chinese President Xi Jinping calls for international cooperation in his address at the gathering of Asia-Pacific leaders. UN aid agencies are seeking up to $200 million to assist refugees fleeing from fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region. And the World Health Organization suspends Gilead's remdesivir, saying it's no longer recommended for COVID-19 patients. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Blitz. Nigeria's inflation rate climbs to a 30-month high. And a new domestic airline is set to enter South Africa's airspace next month. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. In our top story this hour, Chinese President Xi Jinping has addressed a gathering of Asia-Pacific leaders via video link. He was speaking at the APEC economic leaders meeting hosted by Malaysia. The Chinese leader called for more cooperation in public health to beat the coronavirus pandemic and revive the global economy. He said COVID-19 vaccines should be a global public good and be accessible and affordable for developing countries. In a renewed call for multilateralism, the Chinese president said economic cooperation should be a platform for mutually beneficial development, and he said China will consider joining the free trade deal that grew out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It currently includes 11 countries such as Japan, Vietnam and Canada. Well, New Zealand will host the APEC Leaders Summit next year, and CGTN spoke to a former Consul General of New Zealand in Guangzhou about what China's role might look like. Rachel Maidman spent her career forging connections between the two countries.
As a major economy, China plays an important role in APEC, particularly in the areas of economic and social development. So this year, we're setting a new agenda for APEC, and we're very hopeful that the fundamental core values of openness, transparency and inclusion will form a key part of that. China was very influential in its host year in 2014, advocating for a free trade area for Asia and the Pacific, and we're hoping that this continues to be a fundamental initiative to take forward. In the middle of a global crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic, it's even more important for countries and economies to work together. And what we really saw over this period is that the ministers responsible for trade, including China, worked together to ensure that the global supply chains remained open and that there was a free flow of trade and investment. And that's going to continue to be very important going forward.
Let's move on to Ethiopia now, where latest reports indicate that more people are fleeing the unrest in the northern state of Tigray. The UN predicts that around 200,000 Ethiopians could pour into Sudan. Aid agencies are concerned over the impact of the arrivals. There's also the fear of disease spreading amongst the crowds, of whom nearly half are children. Sudan is already facing its own major economic and political challenges and hosting 1 million other refugees from neighboring African countries. The UN agencies are now seeking about $50 million in immediate funding, and those funds will go towards providing food and setting up new camps as all part of a broader plan to eventually secure $200 million. Well, let's bring you the very latest now on the situation in Ethiopia. We're joined live from Addis Ababa by CGTN's Girum Chala, and we're also joined by Will Carter. He is the Sudan Country Director of the Norwegian Refugee Council. Girum, let's start with you. It has been 2 weeks of fighting in Tigray. What is the latest on the battleground?
Uche, today, the Ethiopian National Defense Force and the force loyal to the Tigray region state's leadership had heavy fighting in different locations in the northern part of the country. And as a result, we have heard from the Ethiopian National Defense Force that the towns of Aksum, Adwa, and the surrounding localities of Adigra town fell in the hands of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. Now, this is called one of the most important gains made by the Defense Force since the battle started about 2 weeks ago, as you said. On the other hand, the Tigray regional state is accusing the Ethiopian National Defense Force, more particularly the Air Force itself, of hitting targets inside the Mekelle University, where there are so many students from across the country. And the source from Tigray say that several students have been injured because of the bomb attack. Now, there is no way that we can verify this from the Tigray regional state's leadership themselves directly, as there is no communication. But we tried to speak to Ethiopian authorities here, and they are saying that this is yet another false statement being made by the Tigray regional state. Now, Uche, on the other side, we should understand that the Ethiopian government is trying to form a provisional administration in the Tigray regional state after what it says a mission of law enforcement ends. This provisional administration should take over. Today, that leadership has given out a press statement, and they said that the first thing, their priority is going to be work of rehabilitation of those people who have been affected by that. Let's just take a listen to the executive chair of the Tigray Regional State Provisional Administration.
Due to this law enforcement operation, there are some citizens that are displaced. So the most important area will be the rehabilitation work. We'll conduct rehabilitation activities in cooperation with federal organizations, government organizations, and humanitarian agencies. So the humanitarian activities will be one of our tasks. The other is ensuring justice and good governance is another area. As you can imagine, the Tigrayan people has been, I think, suffered a lot due to lack of justice and lack of good governance. So this interim administration will create conducive condition to change this problem.
Ethiopian authorities there talking about plans for new leadership in Tigray. But of course, as things stand at the moment, we may still be quite far from that point. Let's come to you, Will. Aid agencies are concerned that up to 200,000 refugees will arrive primarily in Sudan from Ethiopia. Now, we know, of course, that you are on the ground. What can you tell us about the refugee situation there?
Thank you. Yes, so we've just been opening and helping work in the main refugee camp in Gadara state in Sudan. The country has received over 33,000 refugees in just a few days, usually between 1,000 and 5,000 people fleeing for their lives every day. They're coming across in quite a bad shape. Many don't know the fate of their family members and have no means to contact them. Some come across injured, others are incredibly vulnerable. And after they come through in a screened-in process, they're transported to a camp which is only just in its beginning stages. And conditions are very, very basic at the moment, and challenges for people are extreme.
Well, certainly a very different picture from what Ethiopian authorities are seemingly painting at the moment. Girum, coming back to you, authorities are saying that those who have fled into Sudan should come back home, and they are assuring them that they will be safe. What is the reality, though? With fighting still ongoing, will they be safe?
So there are two sides of this story. First of all, we should always understand that in this warring situation, the number of people who flee from their localities, fearing for their lives and looking for shelter and security, will be increasing. As this time around, it's a climax of the war situation in the north. It's expected that the number of people who are crossing the border to Sudan might increase even in the coming few days. But according to Ethiopian authorities, Uche, they are saying that they want people to return to their localities as soon as possible, especially in the areas where they have liberated and have a stronghold at the moment. As I was saying earlier, especially in places like Adwa or Aksum, if people are evicted from those areas, according to the government, they can now return to their locations because the Ethiopian National Defense Force are in control of those areas, and they can provide food, they can provide shelter and medical services at the same time. So they are safe if they come back, is what the government is making as a call for people who are outside of the country. Now, the reality on the ground is still difficult to understand because, as we are trying to say earlier, communication is totally blacked out. The communication lines are all cut off. So the number of refugees, according to sources we're getting here and there, will increase in the next few days, and people may not even listen to the government to return to their locations. But the call still stays that the government wants people back to their shelters so it can provide security and shelter for them.
So the government calling for people to come home, but it appears that many are still trickling through the border into Sudan. Will, coming back to you, we know now there is a call for emergency funding to assist these refugees. What are the priority concerns?
Well, really, at the moment, there's very little in the camp, and we're expecting more people to come across. The humanitarian response in Sudan already was very overstretched. Over 9 million people were in need this year. And then there were floods and the COVID pandemic, and now a refugee emergency emerging. So really, its resources are stretched at the moment, and we're struggling to provide basic needs for people. What we see on the ground, they need shelter, health services. They'll need more in terms of foods and basic supplies in time.
Will Carter, thank you so much. The country director for the Norwegian Refugee Council joining us there via Zoom. And of course, thank you very much to CGTN's Girum Chala live with us there from Addis Ababa. Now, turning to some other news, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo has started a gradual withdrawal of its 18,000-strong force in line with an agreement reached with the Congolese government in October. The plan is to progressively transfer its activities to Congolese authorities after 2 decades of trying to stabilize the country that has been racked by violence and political instability. Here's CGTN's Chris Ochamringa with more.
UN troops were deployed to the DRC in 1999 to oversee a ceasefire in a conflict that left more than 5 million people dead. Their mandate is to protect civilians and support the DRC government to stabilize the country. But conflicts have continued in eastern DRC. The UN estimates there are more than 100 armed groups fighting over land and the control of mineral resources. The UN Secretary General has now proposed a plan to start the gradual withdrawal of troops.
The first step, I would say, to this drawdown is to leave Kasai, the Kasai provinces. The military presence there has just finished end of October, so just a few days ago, to be replaced temporarily by a strengthened police presence in the Kasai. 300 police are now being deployed and will stay there until June 2021, which is when we aim at closing Kasai, our presence in Kasai. Then in 2022, we aim again at closing or at reducing our presence in Tanganyika province to concentrate and focus our efforts on the 3 remaining provinces that are where the conflict is the most complex and where the situation is the most difficult. That's Ituri province and North and South Kivu.
The peacekeeping mission known as MONUSCO came under sharp criticism last year for failing to protect civilians from rebels in the eastern city of Beni. Some Congolese citizens are happy the troops will start leaving the country.
The presence of MONUSCO troops in our country has not helped end the fighting in the east. They are well armed but operate more like observers or spectators.
It has been long. We have been waiting for the withdrawal of those troops. But since the Secretary General is now committed to doing it, I think that's like we have been waiting for a kid to be born. Now we think this is the right time because they had delayed so far.
The UN peacekeepers' gradual withdrawal comes at a time when attacks against civilians in the east and the northeast have increased. This security analyst in Kinshasa believes it's time for the UN troops to start leaving the country.
Oui, la MONUSCO est dans notre pays depuis plus de 20 ans.
MONUSCO has been in our country for more than 20 years. We have been following their operations, but we still see a big problem in the execution of their mandate to protect civilians. I personally haven't seen how MONUSCO has been protecting civilians. I think it's time for them to allow the Congolese government to handle its responsibility.
Last year, the Congolese army launched an offensive against armed groups like the Allied Democratic Forces. The ADF has been accused of killing many civilians in eastern DRC, but the army crackdown has resulted in retaliatory attacks against civilians.
The UN peacekeeping mission is the largest and third most expensive in the world. The troops have been trying to pacify the east of the country for 2 decades but haven't been successful. The DRC president believes it's time for the UN troops to start gradually leaving his country. He's asked the UN to support the Congolese army to take over the role of protecting civilians. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Into the United States now, where President-elect Joe Biden has won Georgia and its 16 electoral votes, flipping the state for Democrats. State officials say a hand audit of ballots is now complete and confirms Biden's victory. Incumbent Donald Trump can still request a recount there, as the margin is less than 0.5%. Nationwide, at least 30 challenges have been filed, and all but roughly 10 denied, dismissed, settled or withdrawn. The World Health Organization says Gilead's remdesivir is no longer recommended for COVID-19 patients. Remdesivir is one of 2 medicines currently authorized to treat coronavirus patients in more than 50 countries. But a large WHO-led trial showed it did not improve survival rates or reduce the need for ventilation. The medication was one of the drugs used to treat the US president's coronavirus infection. Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Up next, we feature a Kenyan startup converting petrol and diesel cars into electric ones. And a gifted Nigerian teenager delights audiences with his creative innovations.
Due to its geographical location, Cape Verde has become a perfect location in recent years for cocaine cartels. As a hip-hop artist and former drug addict, Gada Lomba uses his music for social criticism and awareness around real issues affecting the country.
Cocaína pode flow desmorona em vida na cabeça. Ministro fa bro. Você buca troca, você morre, man. A única coisa que pode flow é naquele World Trade Center. A mim te vi previne e resgata jovens de consumo.
Chancho uma Gada Lomba para palco, pessoal obrigado. Gada Lomba!
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories. Let's have a look. We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba,
Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice. We start in Nigeria, where a young man in a community outside the country's capital, Abuja, is causing a sensation with his unique creations and innovations. Here's Deji Badmus with his story.
My name is Ismaila Suraijo from Rubochi, Kuje Area Council. FCT Abuja.
At just 22 and only a secondary school education, Surajo is an example of the raw talents that abound in Africa's most populous country. He's invented and created several items from heavy machine prototypes to robots. And one fascinating thing about Surajo's constructions is that he uses scraps and recyclable materials, simple everyday items you will find at dump sites.
I've made excavator, grader, train, bulldozer, dump truck, electronic voting machine, ship, robot, network service, mass communication, truck.
Surajo started at a very young age when he was in primary 1 and with no learning experience from anywhere.
I started with carton. I was my way back from the farm. My slippers caught. I don't have money to buy slippers. And I look for carton. And I measure my foot and construct slippers. Then the next day, we are going to the farm to pack groundnut. And I think I can't carry groundnut on my head. If I can get a pickup, it will be easy for me. And I look for a carton and construct a little pickup. And I make use of it to carry one model of groundnut from farm to house. Then when I enter senior secondary school, and I think of building a bigger one that can carry me, which is this truck. Then I start from carton to aluminium, then from aluminium to iron.
The truck he constructed solves a number of problems for his small community. And Surajo is able to make some money for himself.
In my community, it's very difficult for people to get water. Before they can get the water, it's very far away. Now they are very happy. With the help of this machine, the water is easy for them. Once they need the water, they call me through my number. And I normally take the water to them, house to house.
We normally go and bring our farm product when we harvest, and before we get bike mobility that will bring down the farm product. So we used to suffer so very seriously. But now, in fact, we thank God. So we need assistance from the government or individual assistance that we make him to produce or to manufacture more this thing.
I can make a bigger excavator, grader, dump truck. If I've been supported by the government, I can do the bigger one that can be used for the construction of the road in the country. Yes, also I can make a train, a bigger one that can be used in our communities. I need financial support, and also I want to further my education to achieve my dream.
Surajo is a talent that seeks nurturing, and at a time when the Nigerian government is driving a Made in Nigeria campaign, creators like this young man could become an important part of that push. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
The evolution of electric cars and bikes is taking center stage in Africa. Opibus is as a startup company in Nairobi, Kenya, and is converting petrol and diesel cars into electric cars. They've also come up with electric bikes, the first of its kind in Africa. CGTN's Nick Mudimba has more.
Tesla set the global pace by making electric vehicles, and now Africa might be on the right track positioning itself in the world of electric mobility. Opibus, a startup company driven by overwhelming effects of climate change, is now making strides. At the workshop in the outskirts of Nairobi, we find the engineers here converting a tour van to a fully functional electric vehicle. They removed the internal combustion engine and put in an electric engine, a battery system, and a control system for a complete electric car.
It all starts with receiving the vehicle and inspection. So initial inspections, we check the quality of the car, what stages in its life it's gone through, and we now start the process of renovating it. So the first thing is we remove the engine, we remove the fuel and the gearbox, because these are things that we do not require for the electric conversion.
After that, they check the feasibility of the vehicle, components like the chassis, power steering, because here they are giving a vehicle a new life. To charge the vehicle, you can charge anywhere there's electricity, and the charging port replaces that of fuel.
we are pushing electric mobility to make sure that it's affordable for everyone, right? So at this point, we're making sure that we're focusing on the areas where it makes most economic sense. The main thing that we do is, instead of importing vehicles to this region, we make sure that we build a local capacity for both assembly, design, manufacturing, and support and service of these vehicles. If we want this area of the world to have a lot of electric vehicles in 2030, we need to start now. There's no time to waste.
But just in the next go down, something caught our eyes. They're also manufacturing electric motorcycles, one of its kind. It looks sleek and compact. The parts well placed and connected.
So we have the first designed and manufactured electric motorcycle in Africa, right here. So a boda rider or a motorcycle rider can actually cut their fuel expenditure and service expenditure in half with having an electric motorcycle. They can double their income from this.
I gave it a try. Its picking power, stability and speed is out of this world. 100% electric. The motorbike has no gear, has no clutch. It's just about acceleration as you move on. Also, the lithium-ion batteries are rechargeable. You can actually carry a backup battery, and also something special is that you can charge the battery in the comfort of your home.
When you come to electricity, when we did the calculations on electric consumption and versus the fuel consumption, we saw that there is 50% reduction. So it's a plus for them.
The electric mobility comes with lots of benefits. Cheaper to maintain, zero emissions, fast, easy home charging, a quieter, more enjoyable driving experience, and the lifespan of the whole technology may go up to 30 years. The plan now for Opibus is to expand and touch base with the transport sector in Africa, step by step, to decrease oil dependency and encourage clean, silent electric energy in the continent. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Nigeria has launched a technology platform to help fight gender-based violence. Partnering with the United Nations and the European Union, the platform seeks to provide information and updates on gender violence cases and victims. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports.
Beaten, raped, humiliated and denied justice. Blessing John is yet another victim of gender-based violence. At age 15, she was raped by her sister's husband. She's lived with the scars ever since.
When this man forced himself on me by fainting me, removed my teeth, after series of fighting and struggling, I don't know what happened. Only when I got myself, I now discovered that he have tampered with my virginity. I saw him washing the bedsheet before my sister come back from school. Ruined my career. I cannot become what I want to be today because of one issue or the other. It's very sad that I lost my virginity to a man that was not my boyfriend. I couldn't go to my dream. I couldn't reach my dream when it comes to educational wise. Secondly, it kills my feelings towards men.
The 2018 Nigerian Demographic and Health Survey shows that 31% of women aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical violence at least once. Many cases go unreported. Now government and development partners have launched the Situation Room, a platform that collates real-time data of abuses against women. Many, like Blessing, can now have their voices heard.
We are in a state of crisis, and this is no time for backtracking on gender equality. The rise in gender-based violence reminds us how important quality and reliable data are. They are important to closely monitor the situation and to help us understand the nature and the prevalence of this violence.
When we say in the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, that we leave no one behind, we need to know where those no ones are. And without the data, we cannot see those people in those areas where this is happening to. Situation Room for the National Violence Against Women and Girls is an innovative data management and visualization platform, and it uses technology to enable government decision makers and program managers to view and analyze the data.
Local officials say sexual and gender-based violence against women tripled during the COVID-19 lockdown. Nigeria and partners hope that user-friendly platforms will help victims get justice and reduce the rate of gender-based violence. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And let's now go to Uche for your latest business news.
Thanks, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Nigeria's inflation rate climbs to a 30-month high. And a new domestic airline is set to enter South Africa's airspace next month.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Well, let's start off in Nigeria. The country's inflation rate has hit 14.23%, its highest in 30 months. That is according to recent data released by the country's Bureau of Statistics. As CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam now reports, several factors such as border closures, floods and conflict between farmers and herders in parts of the country have fueled the surge in inflation.
Nigerians are enduring tough times as cost of food, transportation and several other services continue to rise due to soaring inflation. Latest figures show a 0.52% increase from 13.71% recorded in September. Nigeria's inflation has been rising since the nation shut its borders. The situation has further been exacerbated by the coronavirus-induced disruptions. Experts project it could get even worse.
It's worrying because if you combine that to revenue shrink, government is not increasing the revenue, and so what we're going to see is maybe at some point some kind of stagflation when inflation is very high and of course revenue is low. So the deficit increases, it will impact on welfare, on socio-economic welfare, it will escalate, it will increase the poverty level, and the social insecurity and criminality that go with it. So primarily, this is depressing, this is not good. As we go into the Christmas period, we're going to expect maybe greater increase in prices and the impact on household.
Government's efforts like stimulus and intervention funds have remained inadequate. And experts suggest the government should explore other options.
Everything government has done, none of them have been very effective because the increase in inflation rate is a reflection of the system-wide economic situation. The fact that we are not producing, our revenue is low, our productivity is low, and prices are going up. I think this is the right time to maybe loosen the border closure to allow for cheaper food, rice and others to come to the country.
The World Bank projects that Nigeria could be facing its worst recession in more than 4 decades, all painting a grim picture of the West African nation's economy. With the second wave of the coronavirus sweeping across nations, government would need to take concrete steps to mitigate against the collapse of the economy. But in the meantime, Nigerians would have to brace up for even more precarious times. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And in South Africa, a new domestic airline is set to enter the country's airspace next month. Lyft is busy preparing its operations, hoping to cash in on the festive season. Of course, December to March are South Africa's busiest tourism months, and the country is open for all domestic and international travel now. CGTN Sumitra Naidu has the details.
Local and international travel may be open, but COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on the aviation industry. Experts are surprised that a new airline would be entering the market now. But Gideon Novik, CEO of South Africa's new domestic airline, Lyft, is no stranger to the airline sector. He started Comair, which operates low-cost airline Kulula.com, and later became the local operator for British Airways. Kulula became one of the continent's most successful airlines under Novik's leadership.
People who are able to generate an alternative business model and also deal with the fact that legacy companies have got used to doing business a certain way, then they can disrupt. And that's what really I think Lyft is going to be trying to aim at, disrupting the marketplace.
Novik is not using low-cost flights as a competitive advantage, but instead is looking to enhance the travel experience of the upper working class market.
Our operating model is based on flexibility. It's very, very difficult to predict demand, especially in the times that we're in, having gone through the pandemic. And therefore, we've been able to put together a flexible model where we're able to scale up and scale down the supply of flights based on demand and how demand patterns unfold.
Lyft enters the market when other local airlines are scrambling to stay operational. It wants to enhance the user experience with value adds and technology. The airline has scaled down on overheads in order to offer more in the sky.
So they're thinking in a broad way about the whole experience. And because of that, it's similar to the Uber model, which is the ease of use and also disruptors.
For now, Lyft will operate 3 routes in the country: Cape Town, Johannesburg and George in the Eastern Cape. The Cape Town-Johannesburg route has been ranked as the 11th busiest domestic route in the world.
The airline industry is a great employer, not only in the industry, but all the support industries around the airline, the airports, the maintenance, the catering, the ground handling. And then, of course, there's tourism, which is such a significant employer in our country, and air travel is an enabler of tourism.
The aviation industry has always been a difficult one. Not many airlines have longevity, but Lyft is being seen as a disruptor in this market that could actually make it work. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And to Egypt now, the country is set to launch a groundbreaking electronic invoice system seen as an important step towards its digital transformation. Now, the system will be used to develop the tax system while raising efficiencies. It is also expected to rope in the North African nation's largely untaxed informal economy. From Cairo, here's Yasser Hakim with the details.
It's been a long time in the making. After months of trials, the e-invoice system will be officially implemented for the first time later this week. The government believes the electronic system, which is the first to be adopted in the Middle East and Africa, will revolutionize the tax and insurance filing and monitoring process. It will also help the Treasury achieve its financial and economic goals.
This helps the tax authority to see the sales and purchases of the state revenue on the spot. Also, it helps to include the non-formal sector in the formal economy. Our next phase will be the e-bill between the seller and consumer, not just the government. This will allow by 2021 to 2022 the non-formal sector to be more proactive in the economy. This system will cut on tax evasion and increase the state's tax revenue so we can spend more on services to the citizen.
According to the government, tax evasion in 2019 reached about $26 billion. That's half the tax revenue of that year. This new technology should help crack down on illegal tax filing. The e-invoice simply connects the seller of a product or service directly with the Finance Ministry's platform. An issued bill goes straight into the file of the company in the tax authority.
Egypt is the first country in the Middle East and Africa to adopt the e-invoicing system. It facilitates efficiency based on Egypt's 2030 strategy to transform all procedures and transactions to be electronic. Having the invoice entered directly online will save a lot of audit time for the company and for the tax authority. It will ease the tax evaluation for each company and reduce the probability of conflict between both sides.
The database will help create a white and black list of clients. Companies on the white list could be given payment facilities and discounts in their taxes. Blacklisted companies will face closer monitoring and auditing of their files. 136 companies have already signed up for the first phase of implementation.
This electronic integration is an excellent idea because all procedures and calculations are done automatically once the e-invoice is uploaded on the system. It's easy and simple without much complications like before. Another important development is that for the first time, the government applies the e-signature, and this will further facilitate our work and reduces time and effort.
The government will gradually add more companies to the e-invoicing platform. It plans to cover the whole market within the next 3 years. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, for even the most experienced travelers, getting on a plane during a pandemic is bound to give some pause. One airline is now attempting to ease travelers' minds by testing each passenger for COVID-19 just prior to boarding. Here's CGTN's Nawid Jabrakil with more from London.
Flying from New York to London was an almost hourly service before COVID, but the route's a lot quieter these days, with both the US and UK battling a second wave of the virus. That could be set to change. On Tuesday, United Airlines Flight 14 was the first transatlantic service to offer free coronavirus tests for passengers.
We believe testing is the solution and is the way forward before, of course, the vaccine is available. But it is important to say that testing has to be rapid and obviously accurate, but it has to be accessible to the consumers.
United's hoping rapid testing before departures could offer some hope for an industry that's been battered by lockdowns and travel restrictions. Those who test positive can't board, but there are concerns about the accuracy of some rapid tests. And more importantly, UK laws mean anyone arriving from the US still has to quarantine for 14 days. On both sides of the Atlantic, policymakers are trying to find ways of reducing the amount of time foreign travellers need to self-isolate. As the two largest financial centres in the world, a lot of business between New York and London depends on the route. But more broadly, there's growing pressure from airlines all across the world to find a solution to try and restart international travel. Many are struggling to cope with losses and are growing uncertain about their ability to weather the pandemic. The latest casualty, Britain's EasyJet, swinging to its first annual loss in its 25-year history, a deficit of almost $1.7 billion. With many planes still grounded, it's a similar picture worldwide.
According to our latest figures, we're predicting around 174 million jobs are going to be lost only in our sector this year.
Like so many industries, a potential COVID vaccine is offering a glimmer of hope. EasyJet's bookings jumped by 50% following positive news around Pfizer's jab. But with a vaccine yet to be approved and widely rolled out, the headwinds for the aviation sector look likely to continue. Nawid Jabrakil, CGTN, London.
And a national conference on 5G and the industrial internet is underway in Wuhan. Forums are exploring integration of 5G in industry, and contracts for major projects are expected to be signed. Here's CGTN's Zhang Yibing with more.
A major operation is underway in China to build 5G networks and integrate them into industry to promote high-quality economic growth. This conference aims to promote that integration with backing from the central government.
5G plus the industrial internet is gaining great momentum in advancing the digitalization and networking of manufacturing.
There are already more than 1,000 such construction projects as part of China's national construction plan. 700,000 base stations have been built. More than 30,000 of them are exclusively for the use of industry.
We're about 1,000 kilometers from the mine. We use 5G to remote control operations there with a very short latency.
This is a 5G smart factory for clothing. Remote control helps managers. It's labor-saving and can increase efficiency.
The application of 5G in industry is part of China's next 5-year plan in a sector which is now being drawn up. But there's a long way ahead.
The cost of 5G is relatively high at the moment, and we need to improve standards in applications for 5G and the industrial internet.
Some small and medium companies think there's a technological threshold that needs to be overcome to apply the industrial internet. We need to lower that threshold for them.
Another issue is security.
We need to consider security issues from the start and build security into the system with good designs so we don't have to keep plugging holes as we did in the past.
This is the first conference in China to focus on integrating 5G and industry for national development. Like Chinese President Xi Jinping said in his congratulatory letter to the conference, the integration of 5G with industrial internet will give new impetus to the economic growth in China and other parts of the world. And the participants hope more joint efforts can be made in the sector. Zheng Yibing, CGTN, Wuhan, in Hubei province.
Well, that is all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, we'll be looking at progress towards having a coronavirus vaccine ahead of Christmas. Of course, pharmaceutical firm Pfizer wants U.S. regulators to allow emergency use of its COVID-19 vaccine. More on that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, you are watching Africa Live. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, why the discovery of a shipwreck in South Africa is being touted as a potentially significant archaeological find.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
To South Africa now, where an exciting maritime discovery has been unearthed in Walker Bay in the Western Cape. Divers have stumbled upon the remains of what appears to be a shipwreck which has been hidden for many decades. A treasure trove of long-forgotten maritime artifacts points to evidence of a potentially significant archaeological find. Here's CGTN's Travis Andrews with more.
Walker Bay may be a famous playground for southern white whales, but beneath its depths also lies other exciting underwater treasures, including what appears to be the wreck of a historic ship. The site was discovered by a husband and wife dive team, who on a shore entry happened to come across the remains. On closer inspection, the significance of the find became increasingly clearer to them.
While doing shore dives, we came across a small piece of chain which was pointing out to sea. We then switched cylinders, went back out to the same site and then swam out to sea quite extensively, and then we found an array of chains lying on the seabed. Swimming then deeper off the reef onto the sandy bottom, we found a massive anchor to about 2.5 meters in height, and it's got an arm length also about 2.5 meters.
Resting at a depth of around 20 meters, the artifacts and structure was detected and identified using an underwater magnetometer, because visibility can get to around 3 meters. So far, a number of telling maritime artifacts have been unearthed, including some yet to be identified cultural heritage items. An early assessment by experts, though, point to it being quite old.
The anchor's most
most match that of an admiralty anchor. However, there have been two different kinds of admiralty anchors that were used throughout history. So one with wooden stock and then one with a pure iron stock that came in. So that's how come we've managed to sort of identify that it's more to the 1850s opposed to the early 1800s because of the iron stock that was brought in, which made us, of course, extremely excited about it.
The exact location of the site is being kept a secret to prevent would-be treasure hunters from descending en masse. The South African Heritage Resources Agency has also only permitted the team to undertake a pre-disturbance site survey.
We've seen all the items that we could find just off the surface, so if there is anything else of value on the site, it's not going to be easily found, meaning it's going to be buried, attached to the reef, deep underneath the sand. And unless you're going down with massive machinery, which is going to be very obvious, you're not going to be uncovering anything.
For now, the dive team may have been the first to lay eyes on the wreck in over 150 years, but they won't be the last, because plans are also underway to eventually promote the find as a National Heritage Diving Site. This is the second most significant maritime discovery in this region since the wreck of the HMS Birkenhead was found. But a lot of in-depth analysis and underwater investigative work still needs to be done, including in mapping. The site does, though, open up a host of new opportunities for this seaside town, including in ecotourism. News CGTN, Hermanus, South Africa.